Any kind of course like this, what we do in the sessions is just the tip of the iceberg. And it's, giving you some tools and some information. And then the real thing is to take it home with you and practice at home. Of course, in many ways, it's easier for you to practice here because there's no internet and no cell phone and no TV, and you're not driving your car and you don't have to go shopping and everything like this. So it's a special environment here. And also you're surrounded by the people that you can discuss these topics with. But when you go home, really continue to think about these things and set up a daily meditation practice. Do a period of time that is appropriate for you, not so long that, you're dying to get up, and not so short that you don't get anything out of it. But, make a time period that's reasonable and do some breathing meditation. Here I'm talking to the new people that do some breathing meditation. And, you can contemplate the four immeasurables: love, compassion, joy, and equanimity. And then you can do some contemplation also here about the disadvantages of anger and the whole mechanism by which ignorance and self-centered thought lead to attachment, which leads to anger, and then you can dissect that whole thing and see how the mind is creating so many useless problems that aren't even there. And then, really work on forgiving. And that can be very, very beneficial because, as I said, if it's so advantageous to us to keep on top of emotional things that happen in our lifetime. Because when we don't, then they just stack up, and it's like we keep shoving things under the rug, and then pretty soon, that the rug is bulging like that. Yeah. And then we wonder why our mind is unclear and unhappy. Whereas, if we really do some mental cleanup on a daily basis, then we don't start stockpiling that mental rubbish. Of course, at the beginning of the practice, we have to clear out what we've accumulated up until now. So that's a big chore. That's why some people really do retreats, week-long retreats, month-long retreats. They come here for the 3-month retreat or whatever in the winter because it just gives you more time to do that kind of cleanup. But a daily basis is really good because then we really stay on top of things. And then our mind just feels so much more balanced and peaceful. Yeah, because it takes so much energy to justify, our anger and to rationalize situations and to explain things away and, to uphold the image that we're always right. All these kinds of things that we're so habituated to doing take so much energy. Yeah? And so it's no wonder that we're tired. At the end of the day, we're propping up a house of cards that we call self. Yeah, and it's really exhausting. And we can begin to see that as we loosen the this thing of I have to be right and I have to win and I have to be comfortable and I have to be loved and things have to go my way. And once we start loosening those kinds of things, then, we have more of a sense of humor and our mind just doesn't get bummed out as much. Now, this is nice, isn't it? Would be helpful, not only for ourselves, but for everybody who lives with us. Because, think of the people who live with us, what they have to go through when our moods are going like this, So, we go through the same stuff with them, but, you know. So you might want to encourage them to practice, but but that doesn't excuse you from practicing. Okay. Okay, so we'll start off with some meditations as before, and then we'll continue on the topic of forgiving afterwards. So do the body scan and really check the various parts of your body. Relax the different parts of your body. You don't have to hold any tension there at all. And then focus on the breath. Sometimes it's very helpful to give yourself instructions. You know, pretend like you're leading yourself or someone else and just tell yourself what to do. And then that helps you really begin the meditation in a good way. So let's cultivate our motivation. And with a very open heart, consider the welfare of all living beings, especially because they have been kind to us and we depend on them. And so to generate the motivation to repay their kindness and work for their benefit through improving or enriching our compassion, wisdom, and skillful means, so that while we're on the path and when we attain the result, we can be of the greatest benefit to living beings. Let's make that our long-term motivation. Okay. So yesterday we were talking about our visualization of how the people who harm us are eventually going to get it and come groveling on the floor, begging for our forgiveness. And then we'll feel totally satisfied. And we can either, because we're so superior, magnanimously forgive them, or because we want to teach them a lesson, then we don't accept their apology and rub it in some more how they hurt us. So this is not exactly forgiveness, is it? Neither of those responses is what we call forgiveness. So remember, forgiveness is just putting down the anger, you know, on our side. If we are feeling superior to the other person, then there's no real forgiveness. And if we're still holding the grudge and want to rub it in, there's definitely no forgiveness. So we have to really look deeply. And a lot of times we need to peel our anger and resentment away layer by layer. It isn't that we can put it down all at once. So some of these things, we work on them in our practice for a while. We kind of get somewhere, and that's good, and we leave it for a while. You know, we've kind of, you know, plateaued, and so we've, you know, forgiven that much. And then maybe a year goes by, or a month, or whatever, and something comes up again. Maybe it's even a decade, you know, and we realize, oh, I'm still holding on to something there. And so then we go through again, thinking about the faults of anger and applying the other remedies to anger, the other antidotes. And this time we're able to release a deeper level of anger. And we kind of plateau again, and you know, and so things continue like that. And that's fine, you know. I mean, we're working on things in a gradual way. We're getting somewhere, even if we can't completely dissolve our anger. But what we want to avoid is that kind of arrogance or conceit, you know, that or entrenched resentment that wants to rub it in or look down on somebody, because neither of those attitudes are Dharma attitudes, are they? They're all afflictions, mental afflictions based on misconception. So then the question comes, well, how do we forgive some of these people who have hurt us so much, who we are so angry at? And the answer basically is we have to look at them in a totally opposite way from the way we have, and a way that our ego does not like. Okay, for example, if we look at the 8 verses of thought training, it's in the red book on page 5. Okay. Let's take verse 6. When someone I have benefited and in whom I have placed great trust hurts me very badly, I will practice seeing that person as my supreme teacher. Okay, so think of a situation. Some of you are already making faces. This is a hard one. Think of a situation, because we've all had this, where there's somebody that we really care for a lot, that we have gone out of our way to help because we have so much affection for them. You know, it might be a parent or a child or a sibling or a spouse or a friend, you know. And then that person turns on you. Yeah? And or maybe our ego is interpreting it that they turn on us. But let's put it this way. We've done all this, and then they act in a way that we completely didn't expect. That's a better way to say it. Because saying they turned on us is imputing a motivation. If we just say they acted in a way that we completely did not expect. And because their action is so unexpected, you know, and so contrary to what we want and what we knew about them and the future we had envisioned with them, then we have a meltdown. Yeah? And we feel so hurt, and then we feel so hurt and we withdraw, you know, and just shut down and don't communicate, and I'm not going to get close to anybody like that again because I'll just get hurt, you know. And we have this kind of, you know, well, it doesn't matter, it's okay. I accept that they did this. Yeah, in which we're trying to rationalize, you know, and say we've really put down the anger, but we sure haven't. It's just that we're shutting down. Yeah. Or else we feel so hurt that we get depressed, and, you know, our whole world kind of falls apart. Like this relationship isn't here, or how can I trust anybody if I can't trust this person? Or, you know, it's like it really shakes a lot of our assumptions in life. You know, how could this happen to me? I had done so much before to check the situation out, to prevent this from happening. And now, look what happened, you know. Or, you know, so we have that kind of thing where it just feels like our world disintegrates. Or we respond in anger. You know, I've done so much for you, how dare you treat me like that? You know, you have no right to treat me like that. And we get furious, and we let them know repeatedly, in case they have short-term memory lapse. Okay? So those are some of our standard emotional patterns and behavioral patterns. And do any of them work? What happens when we withdraw because we're so hurt? What happens? We carry. Yeah, we carry it, don't we? Lots of self-pity. Mm-hmm. What else? Yes, we concretize the alienation. And we reject them before they can reject us more. And then we wonder why they've rejected us. Do you get what I'm saying? We feel so hurt that we concretize the alienation, like you said, and they're over there, and, oh, I just don't care about them anymore. It's all okay. Yeah. So I push them away before they can push me away even more. Yeah. What is it we really want? Connection. What are our actions bringing? Distance. Yeah. And then inside we feel so shut in, don't we? And quite lonely. And it takes a lot of energy to maintain that. We're so cool on the outside, unaffected. Yeah. It takes a lot of energy to maintain that. What happens if you see it and you just stay in the hurt and your world falls apart and you get depressed? Then what happens?
That affects all the relationships, not just the one that brought on the depression.
Yeah, so it affects all your relationships, not just the one with the person who hurt you. Huh? What else happens?
Isolated.
Yeah, you become very isolated. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot of hopelessness. We get into our pity party again. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it takes a long time to come out of it. And we can sometimes establish a whole identity of, I'm the person who's been hurt by so-and-so. That becomes our identity. That becomes who we think we are when we meet new people, how we tell them about our life or describe who we are, I'm the person who's been hurt by so-and-so. Or, just been hurt in general. Or I'm the person who's always been mistreated. Mm-hmm. So we put ourselves in the victim mentality. And what happens if we take the route of just blaming the other person and being furious? What happens then? We don't work on our side at all. Huh? Yes. Yeah. Could lead to heart disease. How does the other person respond to our anger? Yeah, they put it back on us. And they push us away even more. So what do we want? Connection. What is our behavior bringing? The opposite. Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe connection isn't, I think we have to kind of look at what it is that you want freedom from that stress or from that.
Yeah.
So maybe connection isn't because you want freedom from the connection, to feel content with that.
Oh, okay.
Rather than reestablishing it.
Okay. So you're saying that maybe what you've seen is that that's not a person you want to be really close to.
Or it's just not going to happen, so you want that freedom from that.
Yeah.
That connection.
Yeah, or it's not going to happen. So you want freedom from your own attachment to that person. Yeah. Because that, and by connection I don't mean attachment. I want to clarify, when I say we want connection, it's not that we want an attachment. we want some way of communicating with that person. And I think, if you have, you're saying that you want freedom from that relationship, but I think that wouldn't freedom from being bound mentally by attachment and anger to that person, wouldn't that mean also that you could treat them civilly and you could talk to them in a polite way?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because if,
Who you are, you don't, yeah,
it's not that you need to reestablish the relationship in the same way that it was before, because like you said, you realize it's just not going to happen. But also you don't want to have a thing of, I forgive them, but I'm never talking to them again as long as I live. Because that attitude is still bound, isn't it? Yeah. But if we can forgive, we may know, okay, we're not going to have a close relationship like we did before. But we can be pleasant to the other person. We can talk to them. We can be in the same room with them without feeling like our skin's crawling. What do you think? Yeah. Possible? Desirable?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was saying, that sense of contentment is raised or the loss or whatever. And sometimes it's the best thing.
Yeah. Right. Right. Well, I can think of many people that I've been close to at one point or another with my life, and something happened and it was clear that we were going in different directions. And some of these people I was very close to, some of these people I wasn't close to, but we just didn't get along at all. But in my own heart now, I feel like, and I see some of these people, that I can be pleasant, that I don't fall into, getting grabbed by the past. That I can talk to them and we can get along. Yeah. There's one situation in which the other person has not forgiven me. And there's nothing I can do about that one. Yeah. But, I think the important thing in these relationships is that from our side we've made peace with it. Whether the other person has made peace with what happened in the relationship, we have no control, do we? We have no control. Yeah. So the important thing is that we work on ourselves. Okay, so how do we do this? How in the world do we do this? I will practice seeing that person as my supreme teacher. What in the world is this idiot who betrayed my trust teaching me? Well, yes, actually. They do become our teacher of patience. And here by patience we don't mean waiting, okay? What we mean is fortitude, establishing, building up a mind that can bear situations, that doesn't fall apart when things don't go the way we would like them to do. So having some inner strength of fortitude. Yeah?
What I see for myself is when I'm triggered, places where I haven't kind of made peace with myself, that I do those mistakes myself.
Mm-hmm.
But when they do them, I just get angry. I don't have patience for it.
Yeah.
But that's places where myself, I don't forgive myself.
Oh, okay. Yes. So this is a whole other thing about how the things sometimes that we find unbearable or in others are the things that we do ourselves that we don't forgive ourselves for.
And I found that often, often they're blinded. I don't even realize that I'm doing them.
Yeah, of course. Because if we realized we were doing those behaviors, then we couldn't justify getting mad at the other people who did them. Yeah. But so often it's true. We do the same thing. Yeah, and we're very hard on ourselves. So that also brings the whole topic up of self-forgiveness. Okay, but let's just keep here with. We'll get to that in a minute. Can I talk a little bit more, and then we'll have some Q&A. So, I think one thing is to be able to look at the people who betrayed our trust, or where we are conceiving the situation as they betrayed our trust, and see their suffering. We usually say they did it deliberately, and they're selfish, they're inconsiderate, they did this deliberately, or they have some character flaw that they are just betraying the promise. Sometimes what happens is we have never clarified with them what our expectations were. We just assumed that, these were the expectations and that they would come through. But we've never asked that person if they agreed to our expectations. And sometimes we haven't even been clear what our expectations were until they haven't been met. And then still not seeing them as our expectations, we blame the other person for hurting us. So I think here what can be very helpful is to go back and ask ourselves, well, exactly what were my expectations? Yeah, and were my expectations reasonable? And did I communicate my expectations to the other person? And did the other person agree to that? And even if they were, reasonable and I communicated them and the other person agreed to them, why do I expect somebody who is a sentient being, who is under the influence of ignorance, anger, and attachment, to always be consistent? That's the million-dollar question, Yeah. Why do we expect everybody to be consistent? Are we consistent? Yeah. I mean, we're consistently fluctuating. Yeah. And we change our mind. And our feelings change. And situations change. And everything's changing. But why do we expect that other person not to change or to never act out of character? Yeah, we don't expect that for ourselves. Yeah, and when we change, we want other people to adjust to it. And we want them to accept it. We want them to care about us anyway. Yeah. And even if we promise something and later we realize we can't continue with that promise, we want other people to understand why we changed our mind and why we're changing the conditions of the relationship. That's what we want for ourselves, but we don't want to give that to others. Okay? So it can be an interesting thing to, I like doing this thing of switching roles, I was always taught as a kid, put yourself in the other person's shoes. And I find it really very, very helpful to switch. I want people to treat me like this. Now, if I were that other person in that situation, and I changed my mind, or I changed my goals, or I changed something, what would I want? And then I see, gee, on this side, I expect them to give it to me, but on this side, I don't want to give it to them. Yeah? So I need to come back And I find that when I really understand my own feelings well, from this side of the situation, then when I look at it from the other person's side, it really helps. I can understand much better what's happening with them. And it becomes easier to just say, this is my slogan, sentient beings do what sentient beings do. Okay? A sentient being is not a Buddha. A sentient being still has afflictions and defilements and is subject to karma and so on and so forth. So why do I expect them to be perfect? And anyway, what's my definition of perfect? My definition of perfect is they do what I want them to do when I want them to do it. That's not a very good definition of perfect. Yeah. So I find that looking at situations this way really helps. And also really seeing the suffering of the other person. Now really seeing that when somebody does something that we don't like, I don't think it's all, we usually think they deliberate, well, let's do it this way. Okay, when somebody does something we don't like, yeah, are they doing it because they're happy? No, they're doing it because they're miserable. What kind of attitude do we want to cultivate towards people who are unhappy? Do we want to be critical of them, or do we want to be compassionate? I think most of us have the value system where we want to be compassionate. So here's somebody who's suffering. Can I cultivate compassion for them? Sometimes, when something happens in a relationship, a divorce or a separation or whatever, one of the hardest things, we may say, I want that person to be happy, but we want them to be happy with us. We don't want them to be happy with somebody else. Yeah, but that has too much stickiness to it, doesn't it? Yeah. It's like, let's just want them to be happy. We don't have to be the object of their happiness. Okay? But to see that they're suffering, and that's why they're doing what they're doing. So it may not be that they wish us harm. It could be that simply they're acting out of their own internal pain. But then you say, but what about if they wished me harm? Then I can justify my anger, because they did it intentionally, they wanted to get me, they need to apologize. Well, so what if they did it intentionally and wanted to hurt us? So what? Well, I'm a victim, and I can milk the victim status for something. We can get a lot of mileage out of being a victim. Can't we? Yeah. Because we can have our own pity party, then we can get other people to feel sorry for us, then we can want people to save us and protect us and help us and give us things. Yeah. And we can basically avoid being responsible for our lives and just milk the victim status. But that's yucky, isn't it? Who wants to stay a victim their whole life? I do. No, we really don't, It's not much fun being a victim. So, even if somebody intentionally hurt us, so what? Why do we need to be mad about it? So I have this kind of dialogue with myself sometimes, when I get angry. And I'll say, I'll have this dialogue. So one part of me says, why are you angry? And the other part says, well, they did it. yes, they did that, but why are you angry? Well, they did, blah, blah. Well, yes, they did that too, but why are you angry? Well, because they should have. Well, who knows what they should have done, and maybe they should have done that, but why are you angry? But they, no, 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 this is the rules of the universe and they should follow them. Well, whose rules of the universe? And even if they should follow them, why are you, and they're not, why are you angry? And when I continue this questioning long enough, what I get to is, I want something and I need something and I'm not getting it. Yeah. So there's a want or a need on my part that is not getting fulfilled, that I want the other person to fulfill. But the difficulty is I can't control the other person and make them do that. Yeah. And so then the question comes, is what I'm wanting just some kind of clinging attachment? In which case I really need to work on myself and give up that clinging attachment. Or maybe I need to offer myself, before I can give up that attachment, I need to give myself some compassion and be kind to myself and say, oh yes, I know you would like that. I know that would mean a lot to you. I know that would feel better. But it doesn't look like it's going to happen. Yeah. And just speak to myself in a kind way and then say, you know, what else could I do to get that need fulfilled? And how can I learn to fulfill my own needs and not be quite as dependent on other people? And how can I learn to be at peace with myself whether my needs are fulfilled or not fulfilled? Okay. So this involves quite a bit of inner work and meditation, but it's possible. Mm-hmm. Possible. Okay. But I find that, you know, really doing, I mentioned at the beginning, the four immeasurables, you know, may all sentient beings have love in its causes, and really, may sentient beings have happiness in its causes, then that's love. And so thinking about that in terms of the other person, because sometimes when we're really mad, what we want is for them to have suffering in its causes, because we think if they suffer long enough, then they'll change their mind and decide that we're right. Doesn't work. So what about if we just wish them to have happiness in its causes? Because if they were happy, they wouldn't be doing what we object to. And so really imagining that person being happy. And again, we don't have to be the person who makes them happy. We have to let go of that part of it. But just to imagine them being happy. And then the same way, may all sentient beings be free of suffering in its causes. And imagine that person and everybody else being free of whatever pain it is inside them that's making them do whatever it is that we find objectionable. Yeah, and extend some compassion to that person. You know, release our expectations of what we want them to be and have some compassion. And then the third one is joy. May all sentient beings never be separated from sorrowless bliss. So to think of beings having the security of fortunate rebirths and also liberation, you know, may they actualize their spiritual potential. Yeah. In which case they're going to be totally transformed and not anything like the person that we know right now. You know, they may have a similar personality or sense of humor or whatever, but, you know, emotionally they're going to be much more even And wouldn't that be wonderful? And then may all sentient beings have abide in equanimity, free of bias, attachment, and anger. And to think of, may I abide in equanimity towards everybody else, not being biased towards this but one or biased against that one. And may I be free of attachment and anger. And also may other people who I have some kind of sticky relationship with, may they too abide in equanimity and be free of their emotional swings towards me and towards the rest of life. Yeah, so really contemplating those four is a very, very good antidote. And, it switches our mind. And we really have to practice this stuff, because like I said, it's the opposite of, our unforgiving state. Yeah, of course it's the opposite, because, forgiveness is the antidote to the antidote to anger. How do we expect the antidote to anger to be something to please our ego if anger is a product of our ego? So it's going to be the opposite. It's not going to please our ego, but it's going to be something that will really bring us peace if we're able to familiarize our mind with that. Okay? And then there's the whole thing of forgiving ourselves, which is also very, very important. Because sometimes when we can't forgive ourselves, then we find we can't forgive others who do the same thing. And so here too, I think we need some attitude of kindness for ourselves. Being kind to ourselves doesn't mean we make excuses for our bad behavior. Okay, repeat. Being kind to ourselves does not mean we make excuses for our bad behavior. Yeah, we still regret our bad behavior. Yeah, not only because it hurts somebody else, but because it's going to result in our suffering later. Now, what we put out into the universe boomerangs back and we experience it. This is what's meant by karma and its effects. So if we cause pain, we're going to experience pain. We don't want to, so let's have some regret for the causes that we created. That not only hurt other people, but will boomerang back to hurt ourselves. Okay? And so then we have regret. We make some determination not to do it again. We develop a positive attitude towards the other person with love and compassion. And then we try and do some kind of virtuous action to put our energy where our intention is. Yeah? And so these four, regret, determination, the positive attitude, and the virtuous action, are called the four opponent powers that come in purification practice. And so that's why we do a lot of purification practice, because it's a way of forgiving ourselves and putting down all the, inner turmoil and guilt or whatever that we have about our own misdeeds. I think it can also be helpful in terms of forgiving ourselves to realize that we're not the same person that we were before. We understand that person very well, and let's have an inner dialogue with that person and give him or her some kindness and some understanding. And I think that's very, very helpful, because often when we've done something that we regret, if we get on our own case and criticize ourselves, it doesn't help very much, because then we just get into feeling, oh, I'm bad, I'm a horrible person, I'm getting blamed, nobody understands me. But except we're doing it ourselves instead of somebody else saying all that stuff to us. But if we can look at ourselves and say, dear so-and-so, boy, you were really unhappy and confused at that time in your life. and you thought you were going to be doing something that brought you happiness, and it really didn't work, and you have a lot of regret for it now. But we understand that you were doing it because you were unhappy and because you were confused. Yeah. So, let's give that person who did it some kind of understanding and compassion. We don't have to say that the action was okay, but we stop being so hard on the person who did the action. And we give that person some kindness or some empathy or whatever you want to call it. Okay? So it's actually quite a practice, to give ourselves some kindness. Because some of us are just so skilled at berating ourselves and criticizing ourselves. Yeah. And then we think, well, if I don't, and in fact people have told me, if I don't berate and criticize myself for my mistakes, then I'm going to get lazy and I'll go to the other extreme of being self-indulgent. Yeah, somebody said that to me once. I mean, this is somebody who just beat up on himself horribly. And when I said, why? He said, well, because if I don't do it, I won't live up to my potential and I'll become slack and lazy and indulgent. And I said, well, just because you're on one extreme, letting go of that extreme doesn't mean you have to go to the other extreme. How about going to the middle? Yeah. And the middle is having regrets for our own misdeeds, wanting to avoid them in the future. Yeah. But having some kindness and forgiveness towards ourselves, because when we give ourselves some understanding, it helps us to avoid repeating the action in the future. When we are harsh with ourselves, that doesn't really help us avoid doing the action again. Because it's not dealing with our own inner pain. And we have to deal with that pain and have some kindness to ourselves and fulfill our own needs in some way or another, so that we don't repeat the behavior. Okay? So now we can do some questions.
I was looking more at talking about that verse of when someone betrays me.
Mm-hmm.
That verse. I just had the thought of thinking about that it's also useful to think about that verse for the six sufferings, there's no certainty.
The first of the...
six sufferings, there's no certainty in samsara.
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
I have a friend who just got really, the person who really, I haven't tried to get her, he's a big shock, and I know why.
Mm-hmm.
So I just think of that, and I think that's really helpful to remind myself that anything can happen, and because then you know we're all in control from the person.
Yeah. So that's one of the big disadvantages of cyclic existence, is that everything's uncertain. And to remember that, and when somebody acts in a way we didn't expect, to say, of course, this is samsara. I had a friend who did that to me once. I was having so many problems with somebody else that I was working with, and I was kind of pouring it all out to one of my friends, and he said, well, this is samsara, what do you expect? And it was like, oh, you're absolutely right. Of course. Okay. Other comments or questions? Yeah.
I was thinking about when we get into if we have a tendency to get to the victim mentality, and thinking that another antidote, perhaps, is that if something happens, rather to yourself, rather than, it is a grievance and an injustice in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
You see that happen, rather than making it about you, creating let's say there was a really bad sexist abuse, really bad, putting you down or losing your job for something that doesn't matter, rather than taking it personally, go, how can I create an action that will, so that this doesn't have to happen to somebody else?
Yeah.
I think that's how movement starts. That person has the wherewithal to go, well, this isn't right. However, how can I make this okay for other people?
Right.
So,
Yeah.
looking at that.
So not taking it personally, and not only not taking it personally, but just not even getting angry. I mean, of course there's injustice in the world. That doesn't mean we have to accept it. And so how can I make the situation better so other people don't have to go through this? Yeah. And so that's dealing with the situation in a very creative way. Yeah.
I was thinking about how in those situations where you feel like someone has treated you with some injustice, like we were talking about, feeling like someone was actually sexist or something like that. How when you're angry and you act on that and start telling people that in your decision, it can really ruin someone's whole life. It can really destroy their life. You start saying someone is sexist or something like that. And because you're angry, you're not seeing clearly what happened. Can have a strong effect on the people around you.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're saying if we start imputing motivations to people and giving those people's labels, sexist, racist, whatever, homophobic, then it can be very damaging to those people if we're incorrect. Yeah. And even if we are right, speaking about that in an angry way doesn't really help. I think it's much clearer, speak about it. We can still speak about it and make some noise, but we're much more effective if we're not angry. Yeah. And I just think of the way Trayvon Martin's parents have acted. I mean, it's been remarkable, completely. They haven't been vindictive. They haven't been accusatory towards other people at all. And I find, they've just been straight. We want an arrest. But they haven't taken the ball and run with it. Yeah, and created a lot of mess. And that's made me really respect them very much. They've spoken out, but they haven't demonized. That's the word. They haven't demonized somebody. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, comment. What's been helping me with the forgiveness? Well, first of all, doing the 35 Buddhist practice every day has been helping. But what I've been finding, just maybe in the past month, is that the section where we say, whatever root of virtue I have created, through even the smallest acts of charity, and that whole section is helping me to move towards the middle way, out of just all that's been destructive. But to see that it's not,
Exactly.
it's not totally that.
Right. Right. So in the 35 Buddhas, the verses that you say after the Buddha's names, one is confession, one is rejoicing, and the other one's dedication. So it's not just confession. You then rejoice in your own and others' virtue, and then you dedicate all the merit from your own and others' virtue to all the spiritual, ideals that you have. And so that reminds you that it's not just confession, it's also rejoicing and going forward and all the positive things that happen. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Just want to make sure that I was understanding correctly the meditation aspect on the things that we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So when we do, like speaking with people at home, when we do the meditation and these types of topics, is it an accurate view that that's where the work is actually being done to kind of make those changes internally so that then when we go out in different situations that slowly our reaction start to be different, and is that an accurate view?
Okay, so you're asking, is the meditation that we do on a daily basis, or even in retreat for that matter, the time when we really take these teachings and contemplate them and apply them to our life, so that then afterwards, when we're actually engaged in situations, our feelings and our behavior will be different? Yes. Yeah. And that's why I think the meditation aspect is so important, because we really have to change our mind. And that requires familiarity and habituation. And meditation in Tibetan is the same verbal root as familiarity and habituation. Okay? So we've got to do that in our meditation again and again and again. And then we start to shift. And at first, I remember, well, personal experience, I remember that when I was dealing with this one guy, if you've read Working with Anger, when I was working with Sam, and I did some retreat after that, and I was just so furious, you know, but I would calm myself down in the meditation sessions, and then in break times I would get mad at him again. Yeah, but at least I was able to slowly calm myself down in the meditations, you know. And eventually it got to the point where I could like stay a little bit calm in the meditation, in the break time between meditations. Yeah. And eventually it got to the point where I could actually meet him and feel okay. In fact, it was very interesting. One time we happened to be at the water tap in India together. And I just had this feeling like neither of us said anything, but we knew that the other person regretted what had happened. Yeah. And so, you know, and then resolve the situation with Sam, but then there's Harry, you know, or Mary, or whoever it is. And then at first, when you're dealing with that person, you get mad, so you have to take it home and, you know, remember what happened with Sam and apply the same techniques to Harry and Mary. And, you know, and then slowly your mind begins to change. And so after some years and decades and so on of practice, you know, the way you look at people begins to change. So you can catch the anger quicker, or you can even begin to prevent it by how you see people. Yeah, but it's all through practice, and there's no shortcut for practice. Yeah.
What comes for me is like it's courage.
Yeah.
To get out of the victim mode and learn to speak up for yourself, or take care of the situation instead of retrieving and doing your own thing there, but not having the courage to go there.
Yeah. Yeah, it takes a lot of courage to really resolve this and get it so that you can be effective in this situation. Yeah, if there is some harm, to you know, where you don't become the doormat, but you deal with it in an effective way. You get so sick of suffering that you decide you have to change. Yeah. You're so sick of being stuck that you know you have to change. Yeah. Yeah, very much. Yeah, and giving yourself the credit for going there. Because it's so funny how it requires courage to do the things that lead to happiness. Isn't that amazing? It requires so much courage to do what leads. Exactly. You know, it's the self-centeredness that makes us so stuck. Huh?
Well, I had a wonderful experience because I kind of wanted to share this. It's the person I've been friends with for 20, 25 years, you know. But I had traveled with her once before, and she hadn't paid much attention to my needs. I left on a lot of medication. I left it in Washington, and we were down in Oregon, and I was getting kind of panicky. She kind of ignored the situation. Next time, she's going to take me to the airport. A different incident, right? But the old stuff came back. When she announced to me on a Sunday morning that we would leave about 1, I'm like, my flight didn't leave till 7 or 8. She's going to drop me at the airport. And I can't do that. I mean, physically, I can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
It's very difficult for me to sit in those kind of situations. And I realized how much she doesn't understand about me, but I said, well, I can't do that. And it started this argument. And she started attacking me, and it's like, oh, we just did this, you know, and I told her, well, just leave. I'll have another person get me to the airport. So we had this thing, and I went through this, you know, this verse, and I'm sitting there, I'm working on it for a long time, and I'm not sure how to reapproach it. Do I want to be friends with this person who is so
selfish?
She doesn't understand me at all. Whoa! She can't see I have limitations and needs.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
Okay. Well.
Okay, and see that I hadn't communicated things right.
Right. Okay.
But at one point, this $50 bill I stuck in a Dharma book to give her for gasoline for taking it to the area, you know, fell out. And it was just, that was the answer. I sent her the money for gasoline for this other trip, and it was like, it opened the communication again.
Yeah.
But after much meditation, I mean, I'm really working on it for about a couple months, you know. What did I do wrong?
Yeah. Well, many of these situations, we don't, I think going to the thing of what did I do wrong immediately, you know, is saying I'm so powerful that I made it go bad. But you want to look at it as, okay, what am I responsible for? What are they responsible for? Take the word wrong out of it. Because when you say, what did I do wrong, you're setting yourself up for self-flagellation and that whole thing. But what am I responsible for? What are they responsible for? And in the process, if we've had repeated things happen with somebody, we may just realize, you know, this is an area that is not their strong point. And so, you know, why do I keep expecting them to do something that is not their strong point? Yeah, and so we learn, we begin to think, you know, because different people can be trusted in different ways over different things. And sometimes we give people trust in areas that are not their strong points where they can't bear the trust. So rather than blame them and rather than blame ourselves, let's just realize, oh, I made a mistake. I trusted them in an area that's not their strong point. Yeah? And so I won't do that again. And there's other people I can trust in that area. And I'll just, you know, I don't have to make them bad and I don't have to make me bad. Yeah. Uh-huh.
And what's so wonderful about that process is that we have to really want to understand and know other people to be able to spend the time to care enough about the relationship to figure out how to do that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because if we have our idea of what needs to be done for our needs, we make this blanket statement, everybody's got to know that, be able to fulfill it whenever we need it, and it leaves, there's no room for the individuality and the uniqueness of our relationships with each and every
Yes.
person.
Yes.
The capacities are so different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sure.
Interesting, we had mentioned doing smart messaging.
Mm-hmm.
I was also thinking that Tonglen is kind of effective.
Oh yeah, the Tonglen, taking and giving.
The person
Yes.
that you're really, really angry,
Mm-hmm.
and all those negative qualities that you have included on them that they may or may not have, to really use it to destroy those own for yourself and your feeling.
Yes. Yes. The taking and giving meditation is very, very effective. Yeah. Taking on their suffering, taking on their qualities, and using it to destroy our own self-centeredness. Oh, same thing?
Well,
Oh, okay.
I was kind of thinking about the courageous brain
Oh, before Venerable Yeshe leaves, let's all thank her for cooking for us and making lunch for us.
When I was just thinking about how many people there are we have in our world that aren't necessarily Buddhists, but how some things resonate with thinking of Dr. King saying, that in order to live a life of truth, we have to be true to the truth. And sometimes that means we're called on in ways we do not like.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that in my practice and as a Buddhist, I think about that as a way of compelling into action. That isn't just about what I'm interpreting as right action or whatever it is. It kind of takes the charge out of what I may think. What I may think is right, but I'm practicing and I have a clear mind. Yes. You can tell the difference between when you come in kind of short station and not.
Yeah.
Neutral.
Yeah.
That's how this is said. Because you usually do get called on ways you don't want to do.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And we can always tell when that's happening when we get defensive. Yeah, we can feel uh-huh.
You know, the story of Sam, how long did it take you to get to that point of, like when you met, and I guess the other part of the question is when you met him at the water hole, did you have any anxiety or did you really feel that sense of peace?
Yeah, no, I really did, because I had been working on it a long time. And, we just wound up at the water tap together, and it was really, yeah. I was no longer in a situation where I had to work with him. So that helped considerably. Yeah. If I was still working with him, that it might have been different, but that situation had ended. And, I worked on it for some years, and then yeah.
So if you had to work with him again?
If I had to work with him again, I think I would be much more careful about certain things, and I would try and communicate better. I would have regular meetings. And now so many years have gone by that I kind of would have to get to know him all over again, because, he's a very different person. Huh? Yeah, he's not the same person. But I would really try and set up better communication. Because, we were just banging heads. But I would, and I think also I would learn to diffuse this. If anything came up, I would learn to diffuse it by humor and by making fun of myself. Because if I make fun of myself, then somebody, and I'm really playful with it, then I don't take it personally when other people make fun of me. I go along with it. So that can diffuse a lot.
Huge lessons.
Huh?
Huge lessons.
Yes, very huge. Very huge. Yeah?
I just want to offer this one small experience I had with a coworker. We worked with patients, and one of my patients, she took some action with that I didn't agree with, and I was all up in arms about it. I was so, it was a lot of drama for me. And in my mind, she knew she had, overstepped whatever, stepped, into some boundary that I have. And it took me some time, and I had a different perspective about it.
Mm-hmm.
And what I realized is that she was doing what she thought was best.
Yeah.
And it just touched my soul. It just touched my heart. It's just, because that's all that we're doing, just trying to do the very best that we can for our patients. And we have different perspectives, different ways of doing it. Like her style is different than mine. And when I found this out, I was excited. I was actually excited, not pretend excited, not trying to be excited. I was excited. I couldn't wait to tell her.
Yeah.
I said, can you meet with me? She looked like, and we sat down, and I just said, I thanked her for, providing this share my vision. And she kind of just nodded her head like, okay, like, it's just,
Yeah.
but I don't always have those experiences when there's, a conflict or anger or something like that. But it's just to have, I've had other times too, but to be able to see it from a different perspective. So I think that's the opportunity that we have for someone that that I see as, someone that I may be with. So.
Right. Yeah. What I've come to see is a lot of times my anger is directed at people who are actually trying to help me. Yeah. It's just they help me in a way that I don't want to be helped at that time. But they mean well. They actually want to help.
And the other thing I realized one of my things is I get territorial.
Uh-huh.
Territorial.
Yeah.
A little bit protective, territorial. So, my person, really like over-accepting where we share.
Yes.
In part, we work on a team, and without those team members, what if I broke one day?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah. Very good. Very good.